Houston, Texas, Halloween night, 2022. A night that should have been filled with celebration turned into one of the most tragic events in hip-hop history. Takeoff, the quiet yet undeniably talented third of the Migos, was gunned down at a private gathering at a Houston bowling alley. The world woke up to shocking headlines. One of rap's most promising voices was silenced forever. Details emerged quickly, but felt scattered and incomplete. Witnesses spoke of an argument that escalated over a dice game. Some said it started between Quavo and another individual, but Takeoff? He wasn't even involved. He was standing to the side, observing. And yet, it was his life that was taken in a hail of gunfire. The randomness of it all felt too eerie, too senseless. Fans and fellow artists were left devastated. Tributes poured in, but so did speculation. The videos circulating online showed chaos. People running, screaming, and Quavo kneeling next to Takeoff's lifeless body, screaming for help. But as more information surfaced, one thing became clear. This wasn't just a random shooting. This was deeper. And the more people dug into the details, the more questions started to rise. Why was Takeoff the one who got shot when he wasn't even arguing? Who were the people involved? And most importantly, was this truly an accident? Or was there something more sinister at play? What many people didn't realize was that tensions had been brewing for months before Takeoff's tragic death. The Migos, once an unbreakable trio, had started to drift apart. Rumors had already begun swirling that Quavo and Offset were at odds. Their brotherhood, which had seemed unshakable, was suddenly on the rocks. In August 2022, just 2 months before Takeoff's passing, Quavo and Takeoff announced they were forming a duo, separate from Offset. The group that had changed the face of hip-hop was now divided. Fans were confused. What had gone so wrong between them? Offset, who was married to Cardi B, stayed silent on the matter, while Quavo and Takeoff released a project called Only Built for Infinity Links, which many saw as a direct signal that they were moving on without their third member. When asked about Offset's absence in interviews, Quavo's answers were cryptic. "We stand on loyalty," he said in one interview, leaving fans wondering if there was a betrayal behind the scenes. But nobody expected what would happen next. Just when it seemed like the Migos were struggling to find their footing as separate entities, tragedy struck. And in the aftermath, the tension between Quavo and Offset only deepened. Could the falling out within the Migos have played a role in the events leading up to Takeoff's death? Some fans believe there was more to the story than what was being reported. One of the most chilling details about the night Takeoff was killed is the people he was surrounded by. This wasn't just any gathering. It was a private event hosted by J. Prince Jr., the son of Rap-A-Lot Records founder J. Prince. The Prince family is well known in Houston, with deep ties in the music industry and the streets. But their name also carries weight for another reason: power. J. Prince Jr. was seen on video walking past Takeoff's body moments after the shooting, showing no emotion, no urgency. This instantly raised eyebrows. How could someone be so nonchalant after witnessing such a brutal murder? And why was Takeoff even at an event hosted by people with such a dangerous reputation? The Prince family's Mob Ties brand has been associated with street connections for years. In Houston, their influence is undeniable. Many began speculating. Was this a setup? Did Takeoff unknowingly walk into a trap? And if so, who was truly pulling the strings that night? As more details surfaced, people started questioning whether Takeoff's murder was truly random or if it was meant as a warning. And if it was a warning, who was it meant for? One of the biggest questions surrounding that night was Quavo's involvement. It was his argument that allegedly sparked the tension, and some reports claim he was the one gambling when things turned hostile. Eyewitnesses said Quavo was in a heated exchange with another group, and things spiraled out of control from there. In a disturbing turn, footage from the night shows Quavo saying, "Let's go before I hurt somebody," right before gunfire erupted. Did he unknowingly trigger the violence that led to Takeoff's death? Or was it deeper than that? Many pointed out that Quavo seemed relatively unharmed in the aftermath. While bullets were flying, he walked away physically unscathed. This led to wild theories. Was Quavo the intended target, and Takeoff was caught in the crossfire? Or was something more sinister at play? What makes this even stranger is how Quavo acted in the months following Takeoff's death. He largely stayed silent, avoiding interviews and speaking only through music. And when he did release music, the lyrics were cryptic, filled with hints of regret, pain, and unspoken truths. As the investigation into Takeoff's murder unfolded, one name stood out: Patrick Clark, also known as DJ Pat. He was arrested and charged with Takeoff's murder, but something about his involvement didn't sit right with fans. Clark wasn't a street guy, he was known as a promoter and DJ. So why would he suddenly be involved in a high-profile killing? According to reports, Clark was seen firing a weapon during the altercation, but there were also multiple shooters at the scene. This raised even more questions. Was Clark just a scapegoat? Was someone else responsible for the fatal bullet that took Takeoff's life? The ballistics reports and forensic evidence didn't provide clear answers. In fact, they only made things more confusing. Multiple gunmen were present, and bullets came from different directions. With all the chaos, how could authorities be so sure that Clark was the one who fired the deadly shot? And then there was the strangest part. Clark was released on bond shortly after his arrest. Some speculated that higher powers were at play, pulling strings behind the scenes. Was justice truly being served, or was someone trying to make sure the real story never came to light? The internet was quick to dive into the darkest theory of them all, that Takeoff's death wasn't random, but a ritual sacrifice. In the hip-hop world, conspiracy theories about secret societies and blood sacrifices have always lingered, but this case had too many eerie details to ignore. First, there were the numbers. Takeoff was killed on November 1st, right after Halloween, a time often associated with occult symbolism. Some even pointed out that his death coincided with the Day of the Dead, a day when souls are honored. Was this just a coincidence, or something more calculated? Then there were the visuals. Fans analyzed Takeoff's last music video with Quavo, Messy, which had disturbing imagery that some claimed predicted his death. In one scene, Takeoff is in a room with a Grim Reaper figure lurking behind him. Another scene shows a contract with the word murder written on it. Was this foreshadowing, or was it part of a hidden message about what was to come? And let's not forget the industry whispers. Some believe that for artists to reach the highest levels of success, sacrifices must be made. Could Takeoff have been a victim of something much bigger than street violence? And if so, who would stand to gain the most from his death? When Takeoff was killed, the world expected Offset to speak out immediately. After all, the two weren't just bandmates, they were family. But Offset's reaction was strange. Instead of rushing to social media or making public statements, he remained silent for weeks. Some thought he was just grieving in private, but others weren't so sure. The timing was odd. Before Takeoff's death, Offset had fallen out with Quavo, and the Migos had split up. They weren't even on speaking terms when Takeoff was murdered. Was there unresolved tension between them? Then there were the bizarre social media posts. Offset made cryptic tweets about energy and fake love, leading fans to wonder if he was hinting at something deeper. He also delayed releasing new music, which some took as a sign that he was shaken, or maybe even suspicious about what really happened. When Offset finally did speak about Takeoff's death, his words were heartbreaking, but some couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. Did Offset know something he wasn't saying? And if so, was he afraid to reveal the truth? After Takeoff's tragic murder, Quavo's actions were put under a microscope. While he was visibly emotional at the funeral, breaking down in tears, some fans noticed his public behavior didn't match his grief behind closed doors. Instead of immediately demanding justice for Takeoff, Quavo seemed distant, almost detached. He stayed out of the spotlight for a while, but when he finally spoke out, his words were carefully chosen. His tribute to Takeoff in his music was heartfelt, but some questioned whether he was avoiding the real story of what happened that night. Then there was his involvement with J. Prince and mob ties. Instead of cutting ties after the shooting, Quavo was still seen associating with people connected to that night. Was he being forced to stay silent? Or was there an agreement in place that the public wasn't aware of? Most shocking of all was the timing of Quavo's next moves. He started making business deals, working on new music, and even appearing at high-profile events just months after Takeoff's death. Was he just trying to move forward, or was there a hidden reason for his quick return to the spotlight? One of the biggest names that kept coming up after Takeoff's murder was J. Prince Jr. and his family's Mob Ties organization. J. Prince Jr. was literally right there when Takeoff was shot, walking past his body without a care. That single video clip alone sent the internet into a frenzy. Mob Ties is known for its deep connections in the rap game. J. Prince Sr., the head of the family, has been a power player for decades, allegedly protecting artists, but also rumored to have a dark side. many started questioning whether Takeoff's death was really just an accident or something more orchestrated. Even more suspicious was how quickly the Prince family tried to control the narrative. J. Prince Sr. released a statement denying any involvement, but instead of expressing deep remorse, his words felt more like damage control. Then, there was the bizarre situation of J. Prince calling out Offset publicly, making it clear that there was some kind of tension behind the scenes. So, what really happened that night? Was it just a tragic case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time? Or did mob ties have a bigger role than they're admitting? And if so, why hasn't Quavo spoken out against them? With so many witnesses at the scene of Takeoff's murder, you'd think the case would have been solved in a matter of days. But strangely, the investigation dragged on for weeks before an arrest was even made. Why? For starters, the silence from key witnesses was deafening. Some reports suggested that those present were too afraid to talk. Others believed that Houston's powerful connections, possibly even the Prince family, were influencing the case behind the scenes. When police finally arrested DJ Patrick Xavier Clark, many people weren't convinced. Clark wasn't some random street thug. He was a well-known promoter in Houston. Why would someone like him risk everything over a dice game? And why did he have plans to flee the country right before his arrest? Even now, the details don't add up. Was DJ Pat really the killer? Or was he just the fall guy? And if he was set up, who was really behind Takeoff's murder? Before Takeoff's tragic death, Quavo was already dealing with personal drama. His messy breakup with rapper Saweetie. At first, it seemed like a typical celebrity split, but looking back, some believe this breakup had deeper connections to everything that followed. Saweetie and Quavo's relationship had been rocky for a while, but when footage leaked of them fighting in an elevator, it became clear that things were way more toxic than people thought. The breakup wasn't just personal, it affected Migos as a group, with tensions rising between Quavo, Takeoff, and Offset. Then came the rumors. Some speculated that Saweetie had secretly been involved with Offset, which allegedly fueled the rift within the group. Offset denied it, but the drama created distance between the three Migos members. Was this just relationship drama, or was it part of a bigger storm that would lead to the group's tragic downfall? Some fans even wonder, did Quavo's heartbreak distract him at a crucial time? If things had gone differently, would Takeoff still be alive today? Before Takeoff's death, Migos was already going through a rough patch. The group had split, with Quavo and Takeoff forming their own duo while Offset went solo. It wasn't a full-blown beef, but there was definitely tension. Now, with Takeoff gone, the future of Migos is uncertain. Quavo and Offset reunited at the BET Awards in 2023 for an emotional tribute, but they haven't officially reformed as a group. The question is, will they ever? Some believe that Migos can never be the same without Takeoff. He was the glue of the group, the quiet force that kept everything balanced. Others think Quavo and Offset might eventually come back together to honor Takeoff's memory. One thing is for sure, Migos changed the rap game forever. Whether or not they reunite, their legacy is already cemented. But without Takeoff, the energy will never be the same. Even with an arrest in Takeoff's case, too many questions remain unanswered. Why did things escalate that night? Why was Quavo arguing in the first place? Why was Takeoff the only one hit despite so many people being there? There are also bigger concerns. Did the Prince family have any deeper involvement? Was DJ Pat really the killer? Or was he a scapegoat? And most importantly, why hasn't Quavo spoken out more about what happened? Some fans believe the truth is being covered up. Others think the case was wrapped up quickly to avoid more scrutiny. But one thing is certain, people aren't satisfied with the official story. Until more details come out, the mystery of Takeoff's death will continue to haunt hip-hop. The fans, the industry, and even those closest to him still don't have all the answers. And maybe they never will. Takeoff's death wasn't just a loss for Migos. It was a loss for hip-hop as a whole. He was one of the most talented rappers of his generation, known for his laid-back flow, sharp wordplay, and effortless delivery. He wasn't just a star, he was a pioneer. His death also highlighted the dark reality of violence in the rap industry. Too many artists have been lost to senseless killings. Pop Smoke, Nipsey Hussle, K6 and now Takeoff. How many more will it take before things change? For Quavo and Offset, life will never be the same. They've lost more than just a group member. They've lost family. Whether or not they reconcile fully, Takeoff's presence will always be felt in their music. At the end of the day, the best way to honor Takeoff isn't just through tributes, it's by keeping his legacy alive. His music, his impact, and his spirit will never be forgotten. Rest in peace, Takeoff. You were truly one of a kind.